She warned me to stop looking at her that way, but I couldn't. And neither could she. The story begins with a simple, ordinary setting, a cafe tucked into a quiet city corner. The air carries the faint, comforting aroma of roasted coffee beans mingled with vanilla from freshly baked pastries. Outside, the soft murmur of pedestrians passing by blends with the occasional clink of cups and chairs, creating a gentle, almost musical backdrop. Our narrator, a 24-year-old man with a thoughtful, observant nature, steps inside, expecting nothing more than a quiet morning to himself. But then he sees her. She's sitting near the window, sunlight catching strands of her hair, making them glow like spun gold. Her posture is graceful yet relaxed, a rare blend of poise and ease that immediately commands attention. She's laughing softly at something on her phone, an effortless, warm sound that pulls at him without any conscious intent. He notices the subtle details. The way her fingers lightly trace the rim of her coffee cup, the gentle tilt of her head, the soft exhales she lets out after each laugh. She seems entirely present in her own world, yet the world around her feels brighter somehow. There's a quiet magnetism to her, a combination of confidence, grace, and an unspoken vulnerability that makes it impossible for him to look away. He orders his coffee but finds himself glancing back repeatedly. Each time their eyes meet, there's a pause, a flicker of acknowledgement that stretches just a little too long. He feels it, the flutter of curiosity, a warm twinge in his chest, a sudden awareness of his own heartbeat. For a moment, the cafe seems to shrink around them, leaving just the two of them in the soft morning light. Then, she notices him looking and tilts her head slightly, an almost imperceptible smirk playing on her lips. Her eyes hold a playful warning, and she speaks, her voice calm but teasing. "If you keep looking at me like that, I'll forget my manners." The line is casual, almost offhand, yet it carries an undercurrent of something more, intrigue, flirtation, and a challenge all at once. He feels a mixture of surprise, delight, and something he can't yet name. There's no rushing here, no overt invitation, just a quiet acknowledgement that she's noticed him, and that she's just as aware of the pull between them as he is. Internally, he reflects on the age difference without labeling it awkwardly. She exudes calm and experience, a quiet assurance that contrasts sharply with his youthful restlessness and curiosity. He feels both intimidated and drawn to her, a combination that leaves him more aware of his own hesitation than he's ever been. The first keynote closes with this subtle tension lingering in the air, a single glance, a teasing line, and the unspoken question of what might come next. The audience is left suspended, sensing the slow-burn chemistry forming between two people whose connection is immediate yet tempered by caution, curiosity, and unspoken desire. After that first, fleeting encounter in the cafe, the male narrator can't shake the image of her from his mind. Days later, he finds himself wandering into a local bookstore, a quiet refuge from his own restless thoughts. He's browsing the shelves when he hears a soft laugh behind him. Turning, he spots her again, this time in the poetry section, her fingers trailing across the spines of books as if each one carries a secret. Their eyes meet instantly, and for a moment the world contracts. He notices how the sunlight filters through the tall windows, casting golden highlights along her hair, illuminating the subtle curve of her cheekbone. He steps closer, ostensibly to reach a nearby book, but their fingers brush lightly, an accidental touch that sends a small spark up his arm. She doesn't pull away. Instead, she allows the moment to linger, her lips curling into a faint, knowing smile. They fall into conversation over shared recommendations. Her voice is warm, calm, and measured, carrying a subtle authority that is both alluring and comforting. He listens more than he speaks, caught between the desire to impress her and the fear of revealing too much too soon. When he laughs at one of her witty remarks, he notices her eyes crinkle slightly at the corners, a small, unguarded detail that makes her feel more human, more approachable, and yet no less captivating. Later, they leave the store and wander down a quiet city street. She adjusts the strap of her bag, and their arms brush. The contact is brief, almost dismissible to an onlooker, but to him, it's electric. His senses are heightened, the faint scent of her perfume, mingled with the earthy smell of rain-washed pavement, the warmth radiating from her hand as it grazes his, the rhythm of her steps in perfect, unspoken sync with his own. Every accidental touch, every shared laugh, every pause in conversation adds layers to the quiet tension building between them. He notices her subtle gestures, how she tucks a strand of hair behind her ear, how her shoulders relax when she's comfortable, how her gaze shifts just slightly when she's considering whether to reveal more of herself. By the end of the day, he realizes the depth of his own curiosity about her. He's drawn not just to her physical presence, but to the calm confidence she carries and the quiet vulnerability glimpsed in fleeting moments. She, in turn, seems aware of the pull between them, though she maintains her composure, allowing only the smallest hints of interest, a lingering glance, a soft laugh, or the playful tilt of her head. Keynote 2 closes with the recognition that something unspoken is growing between them. The tension is subtle yet palpable, like the static before a storm, or the first notes of a song that promise a melody he's eager to follow. The audience feels this delicate interplay of proximity and restraint, anticipation and curiosity, setting the stage for the deeper emotional connection to come. The days following their accidental meeting in the bookstore pass with a subtle restlessness in his chest. He finds himself replaying their conversation, the way her laughter lingered in the quiet spaces of the street, the calm assurance in her gaze. And when he sees her again, this time at a quiet park cafe, he feels a strange mix of anticipation and hesitation, as if approaching her could tip the delicate balance of their unspoken connection. She's sitting at a small wooden table beneath the dappled shade of an old oak tree, sunlight flickering across her features. Her fingers absently trace the edge of her cup, a rhythm that mirrors the quiet cadence of her breathing. He sits down opposite her, careful not to crowd her space, yet aware of the subtle electricity that seems to hum in the air between them. Their conversation begins lightly, with shared observations about the day, but slowly, the walls start to lower. She talks about the quiet joy she finds in her work, the moments of solitude that recharge her, and hints at challenges she's faced without dwelling on them. He listens intently, feeling a growing admiration for her resilience, her balance of strength and grace. In return, he opens up in ways he rarely does, small stories about his family, his aspirations, the self-doubt that sometimes gnaws at him. At one point, their hands almost touch over the table. A subtle pause follows. Her eyes flick to his, catching the slight tremor in his fingers, the hesitation in his posture. He senses her awareness of his nervousness, and yet she doesn't pull away. The brush of her fingertips against his, however brief, sends a warmth spreading up his arm. It's a touch that speaks more than words ever could: trust, curiosity, and a quiet invitation to connect. The conversation turns more personal as she shares a memory from her youth, a moment tinged with regret but also with a sense of humor about her own past mistakes. He leans slightly forward, drawn to her vulnerability, aware of the gentle rise and fall of her chest beneath the soft sweater she wears. She notices his attentiveness, and for a moment she allows herself a faint, unguarded smile, a glimpse of the woman beneath the composed exterior. Laughter punctuates moments of reflection, creating a rhythm that feels intimate and comforting. Every subtle glance, every soft intonation of her voice, deepens the tension that has been quietly building between them. It's not about urgency or rushing, it's about presence, attentiveness, and the magnetic pull of two souls recognizing a potential connection. Keynote 3 closes with a lingering silence that is rich with meaning. He feels the depth of her attention, the warmth of her presence, and the subtle hope that perhaps she feels the same curiosity and draw that he does. For the audience, this is the first true emotional bridge, the moment where their bond begins to transcend casual attraction and evolves into something that feels profound, tender, and promising. After the quiet, intimate connection they shared in the park cafe, the male narrator finds himself thinking about her constantly. Every detail, from the curve of her smile to the warmth of her presence, plays on repeat in his mind. The slow-burn tension between them is becoming harder to ignore, and life seems to arrange situations that bring them together with almost mischievous timing. One afternoon, they meet again at a small art gallery tucked between old brick buildings. The place is quiet, with soft classical music playing in the background, echoing faintly through the high ceilings. He notices the way she tilts her head slightly to examine a painting, the soft crease of concentration between her brows, and he can't help but stand a little closer than necessary, drawn to the graceful curve of her silhouette. Their banter begins lightly. She teases him about his overly analytical observations, pointing out that sometimes he overthinks even the simplest of things. Her voice carries a playful authority, and he finds himself smiling, laughing more freely than he has in weeks. At one point, she reaches for a book in a display, and their fingers brush again. This time, he doesn't pull back immediately. She notices, and a spark of amusement dances in her eyes. "Careful," she says softly. "You might be getting bold." As they move through the gallery, their playful challenges continue. He quips about her dramatic interpretations of abstract art. She counters with gentle teasing about his stubborn seriousness. Each remark carries an undertone of flirtation, a subtle testing of boundaries that neither wants to fully acknowledge aloud. Their proximity is electric, slight touches on the arm, shoulders brushing as they shift to view different pieces, the occasional lean that brings them just a breath closer than necessary. The subtle tension grows not from words alone, but from the small, sensory moments. The warmth of her hand near his as she gestures toward a painting, the delicate scent of her perfume mingling with the faint smell of varnish and paper, the way her laughter softens and lingers in the quiet corners of the gallery. He notices the way she occasionally lets her gaze rest on him just a moment longer than expected, a silent acknowledgement that she, too, feels the pull. For the male narrator, every smile, every teasing remark, every brush of fingers is both a thrill and a challenge. He struggles to maintain his composure, feeling the delicate push and pull of desire tempered by respect. She, on the other hand, enjoys the game, the subtle power of initiating tension, of seeing how far he will allow himself to be drawn in without crossing a line. Keynote 4 closes with an almost imperceptible charge in the air between them, a shared look, a quiet laugh, and the unspoken question: how much longer can they maintain this dance of playful friction before emotions tip into something more profound? For the audience, this is the point where romantic tension blooms fully, teasing the promise of closeness, but still holding back, keeping the slow burn alive and utterly irresistible. After weeks of subtle encounters and teasing tension, the male narrator finds himself caught in a storm of emotions he hasn't fully faced. Every thought seems to lead back to her, the curve of her smile, the warmth in her voice, the quiet confidence that draws him in like gravity. And yet, there's a hesitation he cannot shake. The age difference hovers in his mind, not as a judgment, but as a quiet awareness of the world's eyes and the potential vulnerability on both sides. They meet again, this time at a cozy little bookstore cafe on a rainy afternoon. The air smells of coffee and old paper, mixed with the faint chill of the rain slipping through the slightly cracked window. Outside, puddles ripple under the soft patter of droplets, creating a serene rhythm that contrasts with the turmoil inside him. She's seated across from him, hands wrapped loosely around a warm mug, her posture calm and collected, yet he notices the subtle tension in her shoulders. Their conversation begins lightly, but beneath the words is a current of unspoken feeling. Every glance, every fleeting brush of her hand against his, sends a jolt of awareness through him. He wants to reach out, to close the distance, to let her feel the intensity of his attention, but the weight of hesitation holds him back. What if he misreads her signals? What if the connection they built is fragile and could break with a single misstep? She, too, seems caught between desire and caution. Occasionally, she tucks a strand of hair behind her ear, eyes flicking to his as if testing the waters. There's a brief, almost imperceptible sigh when she thinks he isn't looking, a quiet signal of vulnerability she rarely shows. He senses it immediately, and it deepens his own conflicted feelings, the pull of wanting to comfort her, to close the emotional gap, while also respecting the invisible boundaries she's drawn. Their proximity is filled with sensory tension. The warmth radiating from her mug, the soft brush of her coat as she shifts in her seat, the faint perfume lingering in the air, all combine to heighten every unspoken word between them. He notices the way her eyes light up when she laughs softly at something he says, and the faint crease of concern when she pauses mid-sentence, as if weighing whether to share more. Every detail amplifies the silent push and pull of their connection. Keynote 5 closes on this crescendo of internal conflict. He knows he wants more closeness, more emotional intimacy, but he fears disrupting the delicate balance they've established. She feels it too, a mirrored hesitation, a quiet longing that neither dares fully acknowledge. The audience is left at the peak of emotional tension, feeling the ache of restraint, the delicious frustration of desire held in check, and the anticipation of what will happen when one of them finally allows the other to cross the invisible barrier of hesitation. This moment sets the stage for the next chapter, the turning point where vulnerability meets courage, and the slow burn romance moves toward its first true acknowledgement of feelings. The tension that has been quietly building between them reaches a pivotal moment. The male narrator and the older woman find themselves in a small, cozy bookstore cafe once again, the familiar scent of coffee and old pages mingling with the faint, lingering notes of her perfume. It's a quiet afternoon. The world outside is soft and muted under a gentle drizzle. For the first time in weeks, neither of them tries to mask the pull that has grown between them. Their conversation begins lightly, but it quickly drifts into personal territory. She speaks about a recent challenge at work, her voice carrying a mix of frustration and pride, and he listens with rapt attention, noticing how her eyes momentarily glisten when she recounts her story. He feels compelled to reach across the small table, but pauses, aware of the fragile balance between comfort and intrusion. Then it happens, an almost instinctive gesture. He reaches for a book she's holding, and their hands brush, lingering just a fraction longer than before. The warmth of her skin against his, the subtle pressure of her fingers as she lets the contact stay, sends a shiver of anticipation through him. Her eyes meet his, and for a heartbeat, the playful teasing from before softens into something quieter, something sincere. She leans slightly forward, just enough that their proximity feels charged but safe. They talk in a quieter, more measured tone, sharing details about hopes, small regrets, and fleeting moments that shaped who they are. He notices the delicate rise and fall of her chest, the faint smile tugging at the corners of her lips, and the way her gaze occasionally lingers, searching his face for understanding, for connection. She notices the attentiveness in his eyes, the way he leans in slightly, careful not to overstep, and the subtle warmth in his voice that mirrors her own. A shared silence falls between them, soft and unhurried. In that pause, the world outside seems to dissolve. The rain, the passing strangers, the distant hum of traffic, all fade into a quiet cocoon of intimacy. Finally, she allows herself a small, deliberate touch. Her hand brushes the back of his fingers, light but unmistakable. It's a gesture filled with trust, acknowledgement, and invitation. He responds gently, letting his hand hover over hers for a moment, feeling the electric warmth of closeness without rushing it. This turning point is not about grand declarations or dramatic gestures. It's subtle, deliberate, and beautifully human, a glance that lingers, a hand that finds its place, a shared breath that speaks volumes. They are both fully present, fully aware of the pull between them, yet respecting the slow rhythm of discovery. Keynote 6 closes with a sense of hope and anticipation. The emotional and romantic acknowledgement has finally begun. They have crossed the threshold from hesitation to connection. The audience feels the tension release in gentle waves, sensing the promise of deeper intimacy, trust, and affection that is still carefully unfolding. This is the moment where their slow burn romance begins to blossom fully, paving the way for the warm, satisfying resolution to come. The story reaches its tender conclusion on a quiet, late afternoon, the golden light of the setting sun spilling through the windows of the same cafe where their connection first sparked. The male narrator sits across from her, a soft smile tugging at his lips as he watches her stir her coffee absent-mindedly, fingers tracing the rim of the cup with the same gentle rhythm he has come to adore. There's a familiarity now, a shared understanding that has grown naturally, quietly, over weeks of teasing, laughter, and stolen glances. She looks up at him, and their eyes meet with a warmth that neither of them tries to hide. The playful glint from their early encounters has softened into something deeper, mutual respect, trust, and the beginnings of love that doesn't need to be declared loudly to exist fully. She leans slightly closer, the subtle scent of her perfume mingling with the aroma of coffee, and he feels a steady warmth radiate from her presence. Their hands brush once again, deliberately this time. She doesn't pull away, he doesn't hesitate. His fingers find hers, entwining gently as if they've always known how to fit together. It's a touch that speaks volumes: affection, comfort, and a quiet acknowledgement of the emotional journey they've shared. She rests her other hand lightly on his wrist, her thumb brushing his skin in a rhythm that mirrors the steady beat of her heart. Conversation flows effortlessly, punctuated by laughter and comfortable silences. They share small dreams, little hopes for the future, and the acknowledgement of the lives they've lived, her experiences, his youthful curiosity, the way they've grown to understand and appreciate one another's perspectives. The age difference that once seemed a potential barrier now feels natural, woven seamlessly into the tapestry of their connection. At one point, she tilts her head slightly, letting her cheek rest briefly near his shoulder as they both watch the world outside the window. He feels the warmth of her breath, the subtle pulse of her presence, and the quiet steadiness of her heartbeat. In return, he shifts slightly, careful to provide a sense of closeness without overwhelming her, a silent promise of care and attention. There is no urgency, no pressure, just the peaceful intimacy of two people who have found a gentle, mutual rhythm. The moment lingers, a quiet affirmation of everything that has come before: the curiosity, the hesitation, the teasing, the emotional vulnerability. They walk out of the cafe together as the sun dips lower, the city streets bathed in soft, amber light. Their steps fall into sync naturally, their fingers brushing occasionally, sharing warmth without needing to announce it. It's a connection that feels complete, deeply human, and profoundly satisfying. Keynote 7 closes with the audience left with a sense of emotional fulfillment. The slow burn romance has reached its natural, heartwarming resolution. The story ends with hope, tenderness, and a feeling that these two lives, though different in experience, have found a quiet, enduring harmony. The final image is simple yet powerful: them walking side by side, laughter and light conversation blending with the evening air, hearts aligned in a connection that is as respectful as it is deeply felt.